My recordings are strange, aren't they? They're not information recordings or data or commentary or... They're just being with. I'm amazed at them, really. The trouble is I only know how they seem to me. I don't know what it'd be like to see it as other people hear them. Or as I would have heard them as a young active man of, say, I don't know, 19 to 23. I suppose I just wouldn't have had time for it. I don't know, though. I was a humanist. I was already affected by things like Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, music like the Triumph March. What is it from Verdi's Aida? Music, I mean, you know. Tchaikovsky's Symphony Number
6, was it? Pathétique?
Not so much Beethoven's Fifth. Songs that Mum used to sing, of course. Tend to be secular songs, actually. One or two of which she'd learnt from her mum. I suppose the great difficulties of my childhood, not being with Mum really for the first 5 years, fostering out and so on. Apparently major difficulties to begin with. TB, 1.5 years in a hospital sanatorium. Specialist place for TB patients was quite normal in those days. There was one in every county, at least. They had them here too in New Zealand, apparently, of course. We think of current disease, of course, but, you know, there was polio epidemics. There was TB. Perhaps there are a different assortment of illnesses, but just as worrying to society. Where was I? Hang on a minute. Well, I'm concerned that I have access to much happiness, and so want others to have this too. So I record. 4,000 recordings so far, apparently. Scarcely believable, but I noticed chap on YouTube who does, makes YouTube videos too for car maintenance. He's a mechanic of a few decades of experience, you know. Great American guy he was. I think he was packing up now. He's got 7,000 recordings. So I feel mine's quite modest now. I've been completely outclassed. But he's a lovely, genuine chap. He really just wants to, use his expertise to bless. Be a blessing to people. I think he said he got something in the billions, something like 3 billion followers or something. Something. It wasn't just millions. It was, no, it can't have been, can it? It must have been millions, wasn't it? Perhaps he was exaggerating. I don't think so, though. Although he's a great extrovert. Little chap. Now, he's a chap who clearly has pressed the skip pause button. The words are in torrents, endless torrential words. It doesn't give you time to think, but you know he means well. Isn't that lovely? There are so many people in the world that just want to be helpful and a blessing. And you probably realise that you at heart wish to be exactly that too. You're a child of God. You don't know it, do you? I wish you did. Your life would be so much the richer for realising you're a child of God and your future is unbelievably fantastic and eternal. Why would you want to trust in any alternative view? In the uncertainties of this life, why on earth don't you just trust in this? I am come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. They're supposed to be the words of Jesus. I don't care whether he lived or not. There's a fancy in what he says. That captures my attention, speaks to my inner person. My soul longs for you. My soul longs for you. Nothing else will do. Nothing else will do. My soul longs for you. My soul longs for you. My soul longs for you. Nothing else will do. Nothing else will do. My soul longs for you. My soul longs for you. Do you know what you want to love? You do love. And when you realise that, when that realisation hits you, why else would I want to love God? Simply because I do. You're transcendent. It's as if you phase or flip into another dimension world, a timeless world. Presence. Of the most wonderful. I'm come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. That's why I sing. remember walking along seafront at Southend, and there are cliffs coming down to the sea. Much of them are gardens, parks. Used to be well spent on in Victorian times, but money's scarce in an affluent society for that sort of thing. I'm not at all clear why. It's a bit bizarre, really. They let it go to weeds, but they're still there. And skipping down hot summer beach, not too crowded, but, busy. And these two young girls, teenage girls, not my class, of course, I'm a stuffy middle-class child compared to them, they're skipping down the path, dancing. Two girls, teenage girls. In a different age, you'd say they were on drugs. But they weren't then. They were just full of joy, and joy being with each other, and being at the seaside, and being free, and being young, and probably being female, good looking, I don't know. Can't remember. But their joy just hit me. Their joy with each other just hit me. I was an onlooker from a distance. I don't mean I knew them or talked to them or anything. I was just a passerby. And I was struck by their joy. I want that. I knew in my being, I want that joy. And in my stuffy middle-class way, I didn't have it. I don't mean I was too stuffy. Mum was far too emancipated for that. But relative to them, I was miles apart. But I could see across the divide. It's like when I was in a Pentecostal house fellowship in Liverpool, somewhere around my 30s. And there were two very deprived teenage girls there, utterly devoted to Jesus. And when we were in worship, which would go on for hours, singing, the group, large group, incredibly free, not dominated by some pastor or minister or something, just free worshipping people together. Loving, well, they were devoted to Jesus, weren't they? But that was God for them, and I understood that. I'm not critical, if you know what I mean. But I could see the way they worshipped, utterly devoted to God. And these two very tough, identical twins, tall, slim, good-looking, but in a very deprived way. You knew their upbringing in the mess of Liverpool in those decades had taken its toll on them physically already, even though they were teenagers. But they were utterly translated into devotion to Jesus. And to see them in worship transformed me too. I want that. I want that love and devotion. I know what I value. I want that. And I was freed in the spirit just through their example. I don't mean then and there, I mean overall in knowing of them and knowing of that fellowship and experiencing it. We'd meet in a civil defence hall, beer marks on the table and that. And they were a devoted Christian, very non-conforming group of worshippers, really. I mean, they respected the sort of elders amongst them who did indeed dominate and lead it in a sense. But it was the best fellowship, one of the best I've ever come across, I think. And outstanding people like these two twins. Absolute blessing. Just to know of. I don't mean we ever became, my wife and I, close friends with them. Not that close anyway. Although they did rent our house when we moved south. Incredibly providentially, they rented for exactly the time that we needed till it was sold. I don't know, four months later or something. And they were very difficult times for us. We'd gone into the ministry and found it was not our cup of tea. And we were trying to get back into some sort of normal society, but it was difficult. But fortunately I was experienced in teaching and my wife in social work, so we gradually found a place again back down south in Essex again. Very troubled times, but great experience, you see. You reflect, you know, that the difficulties you have in life so often in the long run turn out to be have been so necessary in you becoming the person you become. Those who have ears to hear, let them hear. I think life is such that in the end you come to hear God talking to you. And I don't mean in words necessarily, I mean in thought and emotion, in feelings, in spirit. You know what you truly value. You may not have personified it as God, I don't know. But if you have, it's so much easier. For we relate to people, you see. Not really philosophy and ideas. We love people, persons. And so we start to long for the perfection of personhood, which is what we call God. And they personify really what we truly value. And we're wrong in some of our values, but he can sort that out, can't he? We live in hope, you see. It is hope that drives every action you're ever willing to make is by hope. A hopeless person is one that lays flat, as in China now. There's no opportunity. They just surrender and lay flat. And the regime can't do anything with them. Its youth is just laying flat. Because you have taken away its opportunity. It's vanished. Poor souls. Millions of them. We don't realize that there's this immense tragedy going on in our time. Perhaps it's a good job we don't. Or we would be overcome with compassion and grief for their sake. For it's probably a problem that's much greater than any of us are likely to be able to affect. Certainly individually. So we trust it to God, which seems an amazing cop-out. But it's an incredible blessing, else you'd be swamped in compassion. I was told when I was a junior trainee social worker, very idealistic, of course, young man, you can't take everyone's problems on board personally, Marshall. That's not the professional way. And I knew in my heart, then the professional way is not my way. I am come that they have life. I am desperately moved on their behalf, and I won't listen to reason or anything else that will block me from rescuing all life if I possibly can. I felt this with the, I mentioned the Kurzel in the last, they employed the marginal people. It was time of, I don't know, was it the 60s? Of full employment. And such awful places could only employ the marginals, the handicapped, the too-old, the mentally ill, the alcoholics, the drug addicts. They were the only labour left that were willing to do those sort of scruffy, mindless jobs, working on the rides or this. But we enjoyed it. I mean, I joined them as a student. Of course, it was student work, holiday work, and weekend work, and evening work sometimes. The bingo arcades along the seafront. Yeah, I used to work part-time in those as a student, just for income and for fun, and during the holidays. And I felt closer to poorer people, which I'd not had because we were very well off. And I suppose from my mum being very much working class background, I had the gift of compassion was in me by the grace of God, of course. Not that I knew God at the time. I did know the goodness of Mum there. That was a step in the right direction, even though she was so secular. She felt she believed in God in her way. Well, I suppose that's what Marshall does too. I hope it's a way that's not so distant that it can't reach others. I so want them to be blessed as I have found I'm blessed. So want them to be blessed. Oh, and that includes you, of course. Don't want to talk about you in the third person, do I? That would be such a shame. Bless you. And I know you are blessed, or there's no way you'd be listening to me. Oh goodness, this is 23 minutes. It's much too long, isn't it? Thank you, Heavenly Dad. Thank you, Dad.